Hello and welcome to The Financial Dad, where I, your average young adult, ask my dad, your not so average financial advisor, all of my burning finance questions. And yes, this is my real dad. This video is geared towards anyone entering the workforce for the first time. In this video, we're going to be talking about everything you need to know when getting your first job. So, I am 16 and I'm starting my first job at a bagel shop.
Okay.
What? I liked that idea. What forms should I expect to receive or fill out?
Okay, well, a couple different things. Some are going to be specific to the company. At least one is going to be an income tax form, okay, called a W-4. So the company will have forms that you fill out that say things like, where do you live, what's your phone number, et cetera, whom to call if there's a problem, things like that. The form W-4 is the most important financial form of all of it, because that has to do with when you get paid, whether and how much money is taken from your pay in income taxes, okay?
Okay.
So that form W-4 is really the key financial thing that you're gonna face and go, what the heck is this thing? You know?
Well, when I do face it, there are a couple things that I go, what the heck is this?
Okay.
What is a deduction?
Oh, okay. So a deduction, and this is on a video for income taxes, but a deduction is something where by spending certain money on an expense of just your daily living, you're allowed to reduce your income by the government, federal government, state government, by the amount of that, so that you pay a little less in income taxes.
Okay. And then on here, you're supposed to add a number of what you want withheld. What is extra withholding?
Well, okay, extra withholding would be if you want something withheld beyond what the withholding allowances that you set would be.
Okay.
So when you have these deductions, for roughly each $2,500 in deductions, and the main deductions involved are mortgage interest, charitable deductions, state income taxes, and property taxes. Okay, so those four things are like the big things. So for each $2,500 of those, you get one withholding allowance, approximately. These are rough numbers. Okay? So if you want more than whatever that number is that you calculate, then you can have more money withheld. That's more common if somebody is married and they're trying to work out the balance between the withholding for spouse one and spouse two.
Okay.
So that's what it's for.
So it really has to do with how much in deductions you have.
Correct. So the deductions drive the calculation of that number called a withholding allowance.
I see.
Okay.
Now, something I'm wondering about, this maybe doesn't have as much to do with finances, but an employee manual?
Yes.
What can I expect with that?
Well, all companies work within the legal constraints of the federal government and the state and sometimes the city in which the business is located. So each company has to have some sort, typically, it's not that they have to, but if they're wise, they're going to have a manual that tells you how their policies work, what their policies are, what happens for days off, for example, or if you call in sick or things like that. And then with that, they also have things like policies on pregnancy, just for example, or when you come back from pregnancy, or how much time off you can take after pregnancy, after delivering. So the manuals tell a lot about policies. They also tell about things not to do, things you're not allowed to do at this workplace, okay? It might have to do with a uniform you're supposed to wear. It might have to do with the use of a computer that the company gives to you. So they might say, for example, you can't use this computer to do your personal emails, on work time. Which you might think, hey, wait a minute, I want to be able to do that. But really, it's their time. They're paying you. So you shouldn't be doing your own stuff, personal stuff on their time. So the manual will have all of that stuff in it. And typically, you're going to be asked, when you first sign up, read it, make sure you understand it, and sign a piece of paper that says you agree to abide by it, that you've read it, understand it, and are really willing to abide by it. And that's important to the employer, because they're basically saying, hey, if you don't follow these things, we reserve the right to terminate your employment And when you have signed that and said, okay, I read this and I understand it, you can't go back and go, oh, I didn't read it and I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Right? So
'Cause you said you're
gonna be held responsible for what you
Yeah.
for what you read and what's in the manual.
Okay.
So it's really important. Don't gloss over it is really the don't just
read
sign
it.
it.
Actually
whatever.
read it.
You gotta read it.
Okay, I'm gonna switch back to the W-4 for a moment.
Okay.
I know a lot of young people have more than one part-time job.
Okay.
If you have a second part-time job, is that actually going to change the way you fill out a W-4?
Well, yes, because you don't want to double count those withholding allowances. So if you've already filled it out for one, on the other one, don't use those same allowances, those deductions divided by 2,500 to create an allowance. Don't use it twice. But I will also say this is where it starts to get a little bit individual.
Okay.
And sometimes it's better to get a little bit of advice depending upon which job, for example, you make more money with or things like that. Okay.
Okay, that makes sense. And the form also uses the term salary
Yeah.
a lot. I'm wondering, how does that actually come into play? Like, a salary is a full-time
Typically,
job, right?
Yeah, typically, yes.
So when we're talking part-time, full-time, if I'm getting a part-time job, how is the way I'm going to be paid going to be different?
Well, it depends upon the nature of the job. Say for the sake of argument that you have agreed to work 15 hours a week answering telephones in a doctor's office for the sake of argument, okay? You might have a salary for that. You may have, they may be planning to pay you $19,000 a year to sit there for your 15 hours and take care of the phone.
Okay.
So as opposed to paying you by the hour, they may be paying you an actual salary. Most people, their first job is in the bagel shop, for example.
The bagel shop.
You know, you're going to be paid by hours because you really don't even know how many hours you may work in a given week. You might be working 10 hours or 5 hours or 7 hours, or you might have a week where you don't work as much, or you're going to be away, whatever.
Prom.
Yeah, what?
I'm going to prom.
Go to the prom, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're not coming in the morning after you work the prom, right?
No.
Go to the prom. So, so there you're going to be working by the hour. You're going to have an hourly pay rate.
Okay.
And you're going to keep track of how many hours you work, or they're going to have a system at work that keeps track of how many hours you've worked.
Okay. So then my pay would differ week to week.
That's
Depending on
exactly right.
how much I work. Versus if I have a full-time salary that's not counting my hours.
Well, not necessarily a full-time salary, but a salary.
If I have a salary.
Yes.
And I'm not as much tracking my hours as I am coming into an office and, doing my work for the week and finishing whatever time I finish at that day.
Yes.
If my hours are different, it might not affect the amount I'm being paid.
Correct. You might work a different set of hours, but you still are expected to work a certain number of hours, as opposed to a part-time person who is, again, working in a bagel shop. 1 week you might work, Tuesday nights 5 to 9, and Saturdays from 8 to 1, and then the following week you work one night only, or 3 nights.
Yeah.
So the number of hours will vary, therefore the pay will vary.
Okay. So now let's talk about tax withholding, which we kind of talked about before. How does that actually affect what you're going to make?
Okay. It depends on how you're defining what you make, right? So if you're defining what you make by how many hours you work times the hourly rate they're giving you, okay, we would call that gross pay, gross, okay, before anything is taken off of that amount.
Yeah.
Now withholdings, okay, and taxes are what gets held back from that and not paid to you for some reason.
Goes to the government.
Let's say it goes to the federal government, or it goes to
yeah.
your state, or to your city, or it goes to Social Security, for example. Once you start working, you now start contributing to the Social Security system with virtually every job in the country. There's some exceptions, but for most. So that money is what they call withholding. Okay, they withhold that. They hold it back, and they don't pay you that. So then what you get, you said, what do I make? Okay, what you get what you're going to live on is what's either referred to as take-home pay, because that's what you're taking home, or net pay.
Okay.
Gross pay,
So
deductions of withholding, vary with withholdings and taxes, net pay.
Okay. Okay. Wish you could just take it all. Okay, so I've got my net pay. How do I actually get my paycheck into my bank account?
Okay. Today, most companies will probably do for you what's called direct deposit. That means that the money goes straight from the business checking account into your checking account or savings account, wherever you tell them to put it. The other option is that they may give you a physical check.
Okay.
Now, if you get a physical check, whether they mail it to you at home or they give it to you at the office or at the bagel shop, whichever one, if you get a physical check, then what you have to do is you have to take that check, you sign the back of the check, and you go to your bank and you present it to the bank, and you either deposit it, meaning put it in, or cash it, meaning give me the money, give me the currency, give me the dollar bills and tens and 20s, etc., of this amount,
to have it in
so
cash.
I have cash. Right?
Okay.
You can do it either way.
I think you can also deposit checks online, right? If you have an online, like, mobile banking app, you can just scan it.
You don't have to go to the physical bank anymore.
Don't even have
typically.
to leave home.
Right. But that would be a deposit,
not
a cashing of the check. You can't cash a check online.
Okay, because you can't just get
There's
money
no way to get the
from your
cash.
phone. Just boop, there it is.
Until phones can print currency, and that would be a big problem.
What information would I need to set up a direct deposit?
Well, the company will have a form that they will give you typically, and it's going to you're going to need your name, address, your bank, what's called a routing number.
Okay.
Which is within the banking system. The money first comes from the account of the bank at your employer's bank. It goes to the bank where you keep money by what's called a routing number or an ABA number. And then the account number that you give, it goes from the bank's accounts to your account. So you have to give them the ABA routing number, and you have to give them your bank account number, and that's how they can deposit it directly into your account.
Okay. So the next thing on our list is company benefits.
Okay.
So if this is my first job, what should I be expecting, if anything?
Virtually nothing. Your first job is typically going to be a part-time job, an hourly job. And in many cases, probably most cases, employers are not required to give company benefits to people who are part-timers. Okay? Now, very large companies, some of them do. Some of them give medical insurance, for example, or paid time off, vacation time, things like that, to people who are only part-timers or under. Think about it, full-time is considered to be about 2,000 work hours a year, 50 weeks times 40 hours a week, 2,000 hours. So part-time is considered 1,000 hours, basically, or less.
I see.
So if you're working, significantly less than that, because you're doing a bagel shop on Tuesday evenings and Saturday mornings, right? So you're not really working that many hours. It might be 10 hours a week. You're going to end up with something like 500 hours, okay? You may not be getting any company benefits whatsoever, okay? Now, but maybe you are.
Okay.
Maybe it's a generous company. Maybe it's a big company that likes to also give benefits to its employees. We have a separate, it's part-time employees. We have a separate video on company benefits. And that one you can learn about health insurance, for example, and other types of insurance coverages and retirement plans you can contribute to and things like that.
Perfect.
Okay.
So now that we are prepared for our job to start, let's talk about what happens if it ends.
Okay.
What is an at-will employee?
An at-will employee is somebody who doesn't have many rights in terms of staying employed.
Okay.
Okay. Typically what it means is that the company can choose to terminate the employment of that person for any reason or no reason. So they don't need a specific reason to terminate somebody. Now there are exceptions to that, because under the equal employment opportunity laws in the country, there are certain things you cannot hire for, treat people poorly for, or fire people for. And they are things like race, religion, now sexual orientation, gender, age. It's it's generally those kind of disabilities. It's
Yeah.
generally those kinds of things.
So things that would be categorized as a discrimination.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's exactly what discrimination is said to be. Discrimination is a very broad term. So, for example, if I don't like your politics, I can fire you. That's not protected. I may be discriminating against you based on your politics,
but there are
you're not legally protected there. And you have a right to say anything that you want, but only the government can't tell you what not to say. A private employer can tell you what to say or not say, or can choose not to work with you based on what you say or not say.
I see. So say that I suspect I was fired for a discriminatory reason.
Yep.
What can I do about that?
Well, the best thing to do is probably to consult an attorney that deals with the employment law and discrimination law, and see if that person agrees that you may have a case.
Okay. And now, I would imagine that's also a problem during the hiring process, but I imagine that's way harder to prove.
Correct, unless the person says something
That makes it sound like
makes
that's
it
why
obvious.
they're not.
I mean, if a person says, you're a little older than what we're looking for,
Yeah.
well, that would be a problem because it's suggesting that the decision was based upon your age.
Okay.
Or vice versa, you're a little younger than what we want.
Yeah.
That's different from saying you have a little less experience than we want, or you have a little too much experience for what we want.
Yeah.
We're looking for someone in this kind of a range because we think we can pay less,
Yeah.
or what have you. So it depends upon what the person says. And quite frankly, you wouldn't know this, but companies are trained. Company employers and hiring people are trained to understand that they can't discriminate in this way, number one. Number two, they got to be very, very careful of what they say.
Not say the wrong thing.
Not to say the wrong thing, because they may open up the employer to liability.
All righty. Well, on that note, that wraps up our episode. So I hope you're all feeling as ready as I am to get your first job, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you have any questions for us, feel free to reach us at our website, and make sure to click on to the next.